Hello and welcome back to the Dice Throne Hero Spotlight. This is the series where we're looking at every single Dice Throne hero starting from Season 1 and going through to look at their board, their cards, their upgrades and abilities, just seeing how they play and comparing them to each other. And this time we're going to be taking a look at the Ninja. Now the Ninja is a bit of a simpler hero, but they've still got a lot going for them. They do a lot of undefendable damage, as well as being pretty good at being able to avoid damage as well, which seems like a pretty good combination. So let's break open the box and see what we've got. All right, here we have our Ninja. They're a complexity 2 hero that, as I mentioned before, cares a lot about undefendable damage, or has a lot of ways to do undefendable damage, but also has a few ways to avoid damage, which is always quite lovely. So let's start over here with the dice. So on a 1, 2, or 3, we have Ninjato. On 4 or 5, we have Shuriken. And on 6, we have Mask. So just 3 different symbols, fairly standard. Then we have 3 different status effects here. We have a negative status effect with delayed poison, which has a stack limit of 2. So if you have this token at the end of the turn, you remove it and you take 3 damage. So there's some similarity between this and poison, but the difference here is that instead of 1 damage every turn, it's just 1 instance of 3 damage at the end of that player's turn, which is still quite good. It does give them a window of time to be able to remove it with something like a bye-bye or get that out of here. But if they aren't able to do that, that 3 damage is quite nice. Then we have our Smoke Bomb, which is one of the ones that we're going to be using quite a lot of if we can. It's got a positive status effect. It has a stack limit of 1. And when you would receive damage, you can spend the Smoke Bomb. If you do, you roll a dice. If the outcome is 1 to 3, no damage is received, although other associated effects may still apply. So this is just better evasive. This is just evasive, but instead of succeeding on a 1 or 2, you succeed on a 1, 2, or 3. So instead of being a 1 in 3 chance, it's a 1 in 2 chance. So this is a very good status effect. And that's why it probably has only a stack limit of 1, so that you can't spend multiple of them. But yeah, this is very good. Most of the time, we want to have this on the board basically at all times, so that we can use it for pretty much every defense if we need to. Next up, we have Ninjutsu, a positive status effect with a stack limit of 3. After attacking, you can spend one of these and roll a dice. On 1 to 3, you add 1 damage. On 4 or 5, you add 2 damage. On a 6, you either add 2 damage, inflict delayed poison, or make your attack undefendable. And this is an attack modifier. So you can use these, and you can use multiple of them at once if you want to add more damage or potentially make your attack undefendable or add delayed poison, which is always nice. So just a fair bit of flexibility, but lots of ways to be able to add more damage to the attacks that you're doing, or just an additional way to make your attack undefendable, which is always quite nice. Okay, so let's start over here with our basic ability. We have Slash. So 3 Ninjato is deal 5, 4 deal 6, and 5 deal 7. Fairly standard sort of attack here. As usual, you probably don't want to be going for this unless you need to, but it is a fairly solid amount of damage there. We have an upgrade with Slash 2 for 2 combat points. Interestingly, now 3 symbols deals 4 damage, so that's actually less. 4 deals 6, which is the same, and 5 deals 8. But on 3 of a kind of the same number, you gain Ninjutsu. So this is a little bit interesting in how it's working. So you're doing 1 less damage on the 3 of a kind, but 1 more damage on the 5 of a kind. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think, again, most of the time, I don't think that this upgraded is worth using, but if you need it, it's there. Next up, we have Death Blossoms. This is kind of the full house sort of thing. So 3 Ninjato, 2 Shuriken. If you get this one, you roll 5 dice. And then for every Ninjato, you deal 1 damage. For every Shuriken, you deal 2 damage. And on a 6, a mask, this attack becomes undefendable. So you really don't want to be rolling multiple 6s here. You want to be rolling just the 1 6. But you've got a potential here for 8 undefendable damage as the high end, or 10 just regular damage if you just roll all shurikens, with a low end of 5 regular damage or maybe 4 undefendable damage. So there's some good potential here. The upgrade costs 2 combat points, and additionally says on 2 6s you inflict delay poison. So there's still something if you roll 2 6s, and you may re-roll up to 2 of these dice, which is always lovely. So if you get like multiple 6s, you can re-roll them to try and add more damage. If you just get the Ninjatos, you can try and re-roll them to become shurikens. Gives you a little bit of flexibility there, which is quite lovely. Over here we have Walk the Line, which is 4 shurikens. Roll 2 dice and deal damage equal to the total roll value. If the final roll value is 6 or less, this attack becomes undefendable. So average on 2 dice is about 7. So usually this is going to be around 7 damage, but it could be as little as 2, could be as much as 12. So again, one of these really swingy sort of ones. But this is saying, okay, you're either going to be doing a lot of regular damage or a small amount of undefendable damage, which is quite nice. So I think this is actually a bit better than some of the other ones where they reward you if you roll high. This is kind of compensating you if you roll low. So it's like regardless of what you get, the result is going to be good, which I think is more helpful than the ones that give you an added benefit if you're already doing well, if that makes sense. The upgrade here, Walk the Line 2, says that you can re-roll one of those dice, which is always lovely. So if you get a 1 on one of them, or perhaps if you're really wanting that undefendable damage, you can try and roll a little bit lower even. But then we also have this additional ability, Tip of the Blade. So 3 shurikens instead of 4, you roll 1 dice and deal pure damage equal to the roll value. So this is just going to be between 1 and 6 pure damage. Remember, pure is essentially the same as undefendable, but you can't modify that damage. You cannot add to that damage in any way with things like ninjutsu, for instance, or cards that you might have. So that's a good fallback option if we're going for the Walk the Line but don't quite get that. Then we also have Smokescreen here, which is a good setup turn. 1 Ninjato, 2 Shuriken, and 1 Mask. A chosen player gains Smoke Bomb and 2 Ninjutsu. A chosen opponent is inflicted with delayed poison. So this really sets us up quite nicely. It basically does all of the status effects pretty much. Gets to stack limit on. We get our single Smoke Bomb, we get a single delayed poison out there, and we get 2 Ninjutsu as well. Is a really nice first turn play. And it does have an upgrade, Smokescreen 2, also for 2 combat points. This time we get 3 ninjutsu instead of 2. But we also have this other ability here, Kujikiri, for 3 shuriken and 2 masks. Deal 4 pure damage to 2 chosen opponents, and you may choose the same opponent twice. So if you're in a game where you have more than one opponent, if you're in a King of the Hill game, or if you're in a team game, a 2v2 or something like that, you could choose multiple different opponents here, but if you're in a 1v1, you can just choose the same person twice, and that's essentially 8 undefendable damage, but you can't add to it with your ninjutsu and such. But that's a really nice option to be able to have. 8 undefendable damage is nothing to scoff at, and we always love having extra options. Over here to our small straight, Poison Blade. We inflict delayed poison and then deal 5 damage. That's fine. This essentially represents 8 damage with that delayed poison being an extra 3 there, so that's pretty okay. Of course, they can potentially get rid of that delayed poison, but they do only have that window of the 1 turn to be able to do it. We do have an upgrade here for only 1 combat point. So roll a dice. On a Ninjato, you inflict delayed poison. On a Shuriken or Mask, inflict 2 delayed poison and deal 5 damage. So this represents either 8 or 11 damage, and it's kind of 50-50 chance either way, which is quite nice. I think this is a really handy upgrade for quite cheap, so I think usually worth it to put that one into play if you've got it. Then we have our large straight, where you gain 2 ninjutsu and then deal 8 damage. So it's 8 damage on the face. And then if you use those ninjutsu immediately, that's at least going up to 10 damage. But it could be, for instance, 12 damage, or it could be 10 undefendable damage. Lots of options as to what it could be there. And then if we upgrade it with Shadow Fang 2, which costs us 2 combat points, you also get a Smoke Bomb, which is really lovely. And we also then have the option of Misdirect with 2 Ninjatos and 2 6s, 2 masks. Gain Smoke Bomb and deal 2 undefendable damage. Most of the time we won't want to be activating this ability, but it's a nice fallback for other options if that's just what we end up getting. We always do love getting Smoke Bomb. A little bit of undefendable damage can just be what we need if their defensive ability is really annoying. The ninja's pretty good at being able to get around that, which is quite nice. And we have our 4/6's ability, Shade Walk. Gain Smoke Bomb, inflict delayed poison, deal 6 undefendable damage. So this is essentially going to be worth 9 damage because of that delayed poison, which is quite lovely. And then we have Shade Walk 2 for 2 combat points. And interestingly here, you inflict 2 delayed poison, but you only deal 5 undefendable damage. So it's 1 less damage, but 1 more delayed poison. So it ends up being worth about 11 damage all up. 5 of that undefendable and 6 of that with the delayed poison, which I think is pretty good. And then we have Jugulate, going for the jugular there, with the 3/6's ability as the fallback. Gain 3 ninjutsu and then inflict delayed poison on a chosen opponent. As always, we probably don't want to be doing that if we don't have to, but it's nice to have the fallback. Then we have our defense roll, a Shade Shift. We only roll 3 dice on our defense. On a Ninjato, we deal 1. On a Shuriken, we deal 2. And on double 6, double mask, we gain Smoke Bomb, but you may re-roll 1 of these dice, which is really lovely. Now, remember, it's only on these symbols, it is not times. So getting multiple swords, getting multiple shurikens does not do us anything, and only getting 1 6 does not do us anything. So like our best roll here is 2 6s and a shuriken. So gaining a Smoke Bomb, dealing 2 damage back. But often you'll like get a shuriken, get a sword, get 1 mask or something like that. It'll be like deal 3 damage back, but you don't get the Smoke Bomb. But yeah, being able to just always re-roll 1 of the dice for your defense is really lovely. And then if we upgrade the defense for 2 combat points, you can now re-roll up to 2 of these dice, and you deal 1 damage for each of your Ninjatos that you roll, though it's still only on for the shuriken. This is quite a lovely upgrade. I think being able to re-roll 2 of these dice is really nice. 1 damage for every sword is quite lovely as well. But I think that re-rolling 2 dice is the key thing there. And then we come over to the ultimate ability, Assassinate. 5 6s. You inflict delayed poison on 2 chosen opponents. It may be the same opponent. You gain Smoke Bomb and you deal 10 damage. So essentially that's worth 16 damage with those 2 delayed poisons if they both go off. And you get the Smoke Bomb as well. And of course, you can add to that damage with ninjutsu that you may have had beforehand. So that gives you an idea of the upgrades and the abilities that we've got with the ninja, but of course we've got some cards as well. So let's have a look at those. So the main phase cards, we've got a promo card here. So as usual, 0 combat points, roll a dice. On a 6, you gain Smoke Bomb and 2 ninjutsu. On any other outcome, draw a card. So that's always lovely. Another way to gain Smoke Bomb is always good. Keep in mind, with all of these ways to gain Smoke Bomb, it does have a stack limit of 1. So if you've already got Smoke Bomb, things that gain you Smoke Bomb again aren't going to be as useful, but you do want to be having Smoke Bomb basically all the time. So being able to use it pretty much against every attack that comes against you is probably a good idea if you can. Next up, we have Poison Dart, 2 combat points to inflict delayed poison on a chosen opponent. This is probably a little bit more than you would like to pay for this, but it's there as an option if you want it or if you need it. But yeah, it's there as a possibility. Then we have Fan of Knives. Someone's a fan of knives. The ninja's certainly a fan of knives. For 2 combat points, you deal 1 undefendable damage to 3 chosen opponents. You may choose the same opponent multiple times. So essentially, this is kind of the same thing. They're both effectively dealing 3 damage, just in kind of different ways. So both are 2 combat points for 3 damage. But this, I guess, has added utility in the sense that you can split it up if that is useful for you to do. And it's also damage right now rather than damage later that can potentially be avoided by getting rid of that status effect. Next up, we have our roll phase cards. So we have Escape, which is a free card, 0 combat points. You can only play this after being attacked. You roll a dice. On a Ninjato, prevent 1 damage. On a Shuriken, prevent 2 damage. On a Mask, gain Smoke Bomb. This is a lovely card to have in hand. Just having a way to prevent damage is pretty great, or potentially gain Smoke Bomb. It is worth noting, I guess, that Smoke Bomb is the only way, really, that the ninja is able to avoid damage. Her defense roll doesn't avoid damage otherwise, it just deals damage back. So this is one of the few ways that she can prevent damage otherwise. So you really are leaning heavily on that Smoke Bomb for reducing damage or avoiding damage entirely, rather. Then we have Thrumming Stars, 1 combat point for an attack modifier. Roll 5 dice, add 1 damage for each shuriken. You may re-roll up to 5 of these dice. So that's 1 combat point to add up to 5 damage to your attack, which is quite lovely. We do love to see it. Then we have 2 instant cards here. We have Train, which is free, 0 combat points to just gain a ninjutsu. This is fine. Free cards are always nice, but just 1 ninjutsu isn't worth a whole lot. I think oftentimes other cards will be worth more to you than this one, so you might end up selling this one. But it's handy to have there if you want it. Certainly more useful here is Smoke Offering, also free card, 0 combat points. If you discard a card, a chosen player gains Smoke Bomb. So I love the flexibility of this as well. So it's free. You don't need any combat points to be able to do it. So you can, look like you've got nothing because you've got no combat points. But because you've got this in hand, you're able to gain a Smoke Bomb at instant speed, which is really lovely. If you're playing a team battle or playing a cooperative campaign with missions or Dice Throne adventures, you can use this to give someone else Smoke Bomb as well, which is really lovely. I love the flexibility there. So that's a card that I quite like. But yeah, that's all the cards that the ninja has, and that gives you a pretty good idea as to how she works. So as I mentioned, she's relying pretty heavily on those smoke bombs to be able to be avoiding damage because she doesn't really have any other way to be doing that. but the smoke bomb does avoid all of the damage. So it's a very much an all or nothing kind of game that we're playing here. But we do want to be getting that smoke bomb most turns if we can. We can, of course, always get it through our defense roll, but we do need a double 6 for that, which can be a little tricky at times. So having other ways to be able to do it, like a large straight, like potentially the smoke screen there as a setup turn early on, can be quite lovely, or of course our 4/6s over there. In terms of attacks, Death Blossom over there is always nice for quite a large chunk of damage. And Walk the Line as some often undefendable damage is quite lovely as well. But you've got a lot of options here as the ninja, and quite a lot of options for undefendable damage. So Death Blossom can be undefendable. Walk the Line can be undefendable. Tip of the Blade is undefendable. Kujikiri is undefendable. Misdirect is undefendable. Shade Walk, of course, is undefendable. And then Ninjutsu can make potentially undefendable any of the things that aren't already, which is not that much. So Ninja is doing quite a lot of undefendable damage, being able to get around other people's defense rolls if they're a little bit annoying, for whatever reason it might be. So that's the ninja we have there. All right, that was the ninja. As you saw, she's got a lot of ways to be able to push damage through. She's got a lot of ways to be able to prevent damage, which is a pretty good combination at being able to, reliably like stay alive but get the other opponent down. She doesn't really have ways to be able to be drawing extra cards or be getting more combat points. So if those are things that you like playing around with a little bit more, perhaps you need to be looking at some other characters. But I've found that she's quite a strong character a lot of the time, and I've certainly enjoyed playing with her, even though she's perhaps a bit of a simpler character. But what are your thoughts? Have you had a chance to play with the ninja yourself, or maybe play against them? I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below. And next week, please join us as we take a look at the Treant. But until then, see you later.